Welcome to the 700 Club. Well, the battle of tweets goes on in Washington, and we say, you know, the attorney for the president says, listen, the president's got the power to pardon himself. He can pardon anybody. Okay. So Trump says, that would be unthinkable. I haven't done anything wrong. Why would I want to pardon myself? So anyhow, it's one of those things that, as Kevin McCarthy said, why do we keep fighting ourselves about hypotheticals that don't have any basis in real time? And I agree with that. Why are we spending all this time on hypotheticals, Terry?
Well, the idea for this so-called presidential self-pardon comes from a confidential memo from Trump's attorneys to special counsel Robert Mueller back in January. Now, the details of that memo have been leaked to the New York Times, and as Amber Strong reports, it was full of surprises.
Does a president have the power to pardon himself, especially when it comes to the ongoing Mueller investigation? Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, says, hypothetically, yes.
He's not, but he probably does.
But the chance of actually going through with it?
I think the political ramifications of that would be tough. Pardoning other people is one thing. Pardoning yourself is another.
Giuliani's statement is in response to a recently leaked 20-page letter to special counsel Robert Mueller from Trump's former lawyer, John Dowd. That memo says it's impossible for a president to obstruct justice, and furthermore, he still has the power to pardon. Republican leaders suggest the issue is a distraction and say it's time to begin wrapping up the investigation.
I don't know why we're walking through hypotheticals here in this process. The president has never said he'd pardoned himself. Let them walk through their investigation, but I think if there's no collusion, it's time to wind this down.
It's all the result of a tug of war over whether the president will sit for an interview with the special counsel. Giuliani says he doesn't see the point.
You got everything you need. You got 1.4 million documents. You have 28 witnesses. You got everything you need. What do you need us for?
The president's frustration with the nearly 13-month investigation boiled over onto Twitter this weekend. When will this very expensive witch hunt hoax ever end? So bad for our country. Meanwhile, the president has a busy week ahead with the G7 summit in Canada. Tensions are growing between the president and our neighbors to the north over those newly implemented tariffs. And beyond that, there's the all-important and high-stakes summit with North Korea June 12th. Amber Strong, CBN News in Washington.
Well, I am with Kevin McCarthy, and I'm with others who say this thing has gone too far. It's just absurd. The whole idea, how can a president obstruct justice? He's the chief executive of the United States of America. The Attorney General serves at his pleasure, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with the president consulting with the Attorney General or with somebody else down the line who reports up the line to him. You don't obstruct justice when you're the chief legal officer. And the whole thing is absurd. This whole thing is nothing but a witch hunt. It's stirred up by people on the left, and it's time it stopped. I think the American people, they ought to be disgusted and sick of this thing. And I think the FBI, who had great honor and luster some years ago, is losing its honor and losing its luster by the shenanigans that are going on in the FBI and with this Mueller investigation. I don't like it. Well, it looks like we'll see. In other news, the death toll is on the rise after a volcano erupted in Central America. John Jessup has that.
That's right, Pat. A deadly volcanic eruption in Guatemala has killed at least 25 people, and the death toll is expected to climb. The volcano fire, one of Central America's most active volcanoes, exploded Sunday, sending blankets of ash and lava into nearby villages. An undetermined number of people are missing, and firefighters said they were unable to reach people who were trapped because of damaged or blocked roads. Guatemala's president has declared a state of emergency. CBN's Operation Blessing in Guatemala is working with government officials to help victims in the disaster zone. They are already sending hygiene kits, face masks, food, and medicine. Pat?
Operation Blessing has worked so diligently around the world to help people who are the victims of disasters, and this is one more. And I think that you want to participate. Here's the address. It's 1-800-700-7000. It's Operation Blessing, International Relief and Disaster And you can, it's Operation Blessing to say International Relief Fund, CBN Center, Virginia Beach. Let's help people who are suffering, and we'll find out more about that terrible disaster. But I tell you what, folks, I want you to keep in mind, there's this so-called ring of fire that goes around the Pacific, and it goes, starts way back in Indonesia. Then it goes up north. It's the Aleutian Islands, and it's up toward Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and down into South America. So they're tectonic plates that are moving all the time. And I, for one, think that this volcano that's going on in Hawaii is somehow tied together with what's happening. The plates are shifting, and as a result, we're getting earthquakes and we're getting volcanoes. Now, in Hawaii, which actually arose from the ocean, it was part of a volcanic uprising that brought those islands to be. They're suffering like crazy. So let's see what we have about that. John?
That's right, Pat. Speaking of volcanoes, the one on Hawaii's Big Island continues to destroy homes and put lives at risk. Authorities say nearly a dozen people are now stranded in an area cut off by a river of lava after a small earthquake caused an eruption yesterday. Residents were warned to evacuate, but now their escape route has been cut off by lava flow.
You know, that kind of makes it hard on responders and the emergency personnel because, you know, we're tracking stuff that's potentially dangerous, and if, you know, one of those walls break out and they're there, you know, they're going to be inundated right away, and we're not going to be able to help them.
First responders are conducting search and rescue missions in affected isolated areas today, and officials warn residents on the south and west sides of the island to take action to limit exposure to gas, ash, and volcanic particles. Well, a political eruption of sorts threatens Washington, D.C. this week. The Inspector General report on how the FBI handled Hillary Clinton's email scandal is expected any day now. CBN national security correspondent Eric Rosales has this closer look at who could face charges in the case.
The conclusions from this Department of Justice Inspector General report have the potential to be a bombshell. A report some say could end with indictments on some key players here in D.C., including the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton herself.
There's no question that by setting up a home server to handle all of her official government communications, including classified materials, that fits the very definition of gross negligence.
The report is also expected to show why then FBI Director James Comey initially cleared Hillary Clinton in July 2016 in the middle of her presidential campaign. Both the Senate Judiciary Committee and House Oversight Committee are preparing to have Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz appear before them later this month. The report will also look deeper into the unusual private meeting between then Attorney General Loretta Lynch and President Bill Clinton on an airport tarmac. It happened only days before Comey announced the FBI would not seek criminal charges in the email server case.
That was improper, I think. It wasn't ethical for that to happen, and the IG has got to look at that. And things like the fact that both Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills were quickly granted immunity by the FBI without any real explanation as to why that was needed or why it was done.
The report has already resulted in a criminal referral for former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who was fired after it was discovered he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Eric. Well, President Trump could face blowback over steel and aluminum tariffs. He heads to the G7 summit in Quebec, where Canada is threatening to strike back with its own tariffs on almost $13 billion in U.S. goods. Economists warn tariffs and any trade war could cost thousands of American jobs and even put the economy in recession. The president's chief economic advisor told Fox News it is possible the tariffs will hurt the economy.
Oh, it might. I don't deny that. You have to keep an eye on it. It's very precious.
It could jeopardize that.
It's possible, absolutely. I don't think it has right now.
The summit begins Friday in Canada. Well, Friday's jobs report drew a lot of praise as it marked an 18-year low in unemployment. One of the bigger surprises came with the dramatic drop in black unemployment. That rate dropped half a point in May to 5.9%. That's a historic low. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says the gap between white and black unemployment has never been smaller. Well, on the surface, one of this year's major Supreme Court cases might appear to be a fight over abortion, but it goes much deeper than that. As Paul Strand explains, the High Court's decision could have a chilling effect on free speech.
California legislators passed a law forcing pro-life pregnancy centers to do the unthinkable, advertise for abortion.
Issue here is, can the government mandate that a faith-based ministry, or for that matter anybody, speak a message with which they fundamentally disagree, and if they fail to comply, then fine them, penalize them, and close them down? Because that's what California is trying to do.
What's interesting is, though pro-life pregnancy centers are certainly involved in this case, their fate is not the core issue here. As one plaintiff put it to CBN News, what's going to matter is whether the justices care more about abortion or free speech.
Everybody's going to be endangered if this law is upheld, because now the government can bully their way into anybody's life and say, you must speak this message whether you disagree with it or not.
That's why Tom Glesner of National Institute of Family and Life Advocates thinks his side will win.
I was in the court when it was argued, and it appeared that even the liberal justices were very, very, very hard on the state of California.
Glesner believes the abortion industry pushed legislators to pass the bill specifically to help its bottom line.
When a pro-life pregnancy center reaches a woman's heart and she changes her mind, guess what? The abortion industry loses some money. And hundreds of thousands of women have done that over the years. That's millions of dollars that the abortion industry has lost.
Because as Glesner's been watching the pro-life pregnancy center movement grow and grow over the last 25 years, he's been watching the number of abortions go down and down.
When an abortion vulnerable or abortion-minded woman sees her unborn child on an ultrasound screen prior to making her decision, 90% of those mothers will choose life, 90%.
The court's ruling on this issue is expected in late June. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the Supreme Court.
Thanks, Paul. And Pat, certainly a lot of people are going to be wondering how the justices will rule on this case.
Well, they usually come down on the side of free speech, and I think any attempt by the state to mandate speech or to limit speech usually gets the attention even of those so-called liberal justices. So you could see a 7-3 decision in favor of limiting what California is doing. But I tell you, it shows what 1 or 2 votes of the Supreme Court means. And right now, here in Virginia, for example, we've got a senatorial race that people are not paying much attention to, but the election of a conservative to the Senate can mean a huge difference, because it's almost split. It's 51-49 or something like that. So there are Senate races going on around the country that are extremely important. And considering that the Senate has the ability to, advise and consent to decide who goes or who doesn't. So the president's going to be sending up some pro-life judges, some judges who are pro-Constitution, pro-letter of the law, and the others will be sending up judges who are with the progressive school that says that the Constitution is a living document and should be interpreted according to the mores of any particular year that it comes up. So it's a major philosophical difference, and but just think about 1 or 2 more judges. Before long, I think before this term is out, one of the judges, probably one of the more liberal judges, is going to resign, and that's going to mean a huge fight. But with the fact that they've taken away the so-called nuclear option, and now a majority of the Senate can confirm, we could see a radical shift to the Supreme Court, which will change the way all of us live. I think it's very important.